Oh, I guess I'll do a little live update, meaning you'll see this as soon as I make it, even though I have already uploaded some videos tonight. But there's enough news. I was going to wait, but I'll do it now and possibly tomorrow write some notes. I'm going to teach tomorrow and conclude the book of Acts, which you won't see that, until next week. And I have 2 teaching videos before that, the Sunday sermon one and all. And I want to just, today we'll talk. I might do like what the media does. And I'll title something like My Connection to the Texas Church Massacre. Would that be a good title? Oh, John, what connection do you have? Well, we found out that that shooter, and of course here's your front page story in the Corpus Caller, gunman kills 26, and of course it's world news. His name is Devin Kelley of Como County. That's an area, I was almost up in that area today on my little rides. But he went to the First Baptist Church, they found out, in Kingsville back in 2014. And I actually visited that church, years ago. First Baptist Church in Kingsville, Texas. So that's the connection, all right? And I noticed all of the local media, or most of them, have reporters on the scene. I could have driven there. I drive to San Antonio a lot. And that little Sutherland Spring? That little town is right there by San Antonio. And I notice how the media, our local media, is not saying it's just close to San Antonio, but just 2 hours north of Corpus Christi, which is true. And on the scene tonight, they had live reporters there on the scene. Today, should we talk mental illness? Today was a day where I said, I'll be silent. I won't talk. And so I had a good day. But I avoided a lot of people just for the sake of just trying to be alone, to learn that discipline. So I really spent a lot of time, walked North Beach, but I noticed, even if it's not that populated and I'm doing my walk, I kind of want to avoid people. It's just a tendency. So I'll kind of walk, if there's a few people there by the water, I kind of get, I'll walk up to the sidewalk area. And then if there's somebody walking by, it annoys me. And it's nothing that you decide for, you just kind of want to just avoid people. That's a process, I guess, of the way sometimes people go through stages. And it was difficult not to speak. But I sat there, did my walk, and it was very nice. I wanted to do a video. There was a dead sea turtle, which here, that was close to the aquarium. And whenever there's a dead sea turtle, normally you report it. And I was going to take a picture and just post it and say, look, you got a dead sea turtle right here, not far from the Texas State Aquarium by the Lexington. And that's actually the entity that will pick those up. But as I did the walk back, somebody already reported it, and they had people out there picking up the dead sea turtle. Because they always want to see why, what reason they died. There's some silly media that I could talk about. I criticized the Kohler Times a while back because there was a man by the name of Seth Rich. Then we'll get to the big story. And Seth Rich was a man who worked for the Hillary Clinton campaign. And he seemed to have been, according to the leaks that were going on and all, WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, well, it seemed like this man was responsible for leaking some emails, and he was inside the campaign. Well, Seth Rich was found murdered in Washington, D.C., and it was suspicious. Okay, it was suspicious because there was some information that this man was leaking the Hillary stuff from inside the campaign. Maybe he realized that they were doing things to kind of screw Bernie Sanders, which we now know the last few days, the Donna Brazile book. But when he was murdered in the streets of D.C., it was a so-called robbery or botched robbery, but nothing was taken from him. And there were some people in the media that questioned, was this man targeted because of a political reason? And I remember, I mentioned it once, then the Caller Times, our media, did a big thing about what a conspiracy to believe that a man might have actually been killed because of political reasons. Like, what a conspiracy theorist off the... Well, we just found out from Donna Brazile, who was a woman that worked in the campaign, Christian woman and a black woman. She just came out with a tell-all book, and she said how she herself and possibly others in the Clinton campaign, she herself said she kept the blinds to her office shut, and there was a fear, at least with her, that Seth Rich, another person who worked along with her in the Hillary campaign, there was a fear that he indeed was murdered, targeted, because of what the Caller Times referred to as so-called conspiracy theorists. So, and I remember, so that's more proof that even within the campaign of Hillary Clinton, people believed, man, maybe he was targeted because of the stuff he was releasing. But the media has this thing, and they did one about 2 weeks ago. They had something on the former governor, who's now Energy Secretary, former governor of Texas, Rick Perry. And all I saw on it was Rick Perry now believes that fossil fuels, burning of coal, so forth, quote, dirty energy, can prevent sexually transmitted diseases. Rick Perry now believes, that was the media, that fossil fuels can prevent rape and STDs. And that was it. Like, oh, this man is so, there's such... And then I read the article, and there was a girl that he spoke to in, it might have been Africa, but a young girl. And in the conversation, there are many third world areas, third world countries in our world. And some of these areas actually have no power. Not just things like the Puerto Rico hurricanes and so forth. It's not their world, I understand this, all right? But there are places in the world that they still actually don't have electricity. They actually still don't have power. And in these third world countries, if there was any pressure, which there is, to not allow there to be dirty coal fuel plants and so forth, that it's a hindrance to them even for their basic survival. So obviously, if the primary way that you would get just the basic elements of having electric to certain towns and regions and areas and tribes, certainly you wouldn't want an anti-coal agenda to prevent these people. And this was a story that Rick Perry himself was telling, and the girl said because there's no power in her town at night, they don't have lights and things like that, that the rise of rapes and all take place at night, even of the younger kids, which is true. And instead of the media reporting it like that, basically what Perry was saying was true, that there are some underprivileged parts of our world, and because the lights go out at night, that's where the rapes of the young children occur. And instead of saying, that is a problem, and maybe if the choice was they're going to have some coal-powered fuel or energy in that area that is, quote, not considered clean, but maybe for the benefit of the prevention of what we discussed. But no, the media reported that Rick Perry believes fossil fuels will stop rape and STD. And you expect people to take you serious. The media. Let's see. I mentioned the Donna Brazile. That was one thing. There's many other stories. The heart attack. Man, I had some chest pains the other night. Like you wake up, you can't sleep because you have chest pains. And what's the first? People sometimes have heart attacks and they don't realize it, all right? And then later when they go in, they can detect you've had multiple ones. Whether I've had them or not, I don't know. But I just wrote it because what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Go to the hospital? I ate aspirins. I chewed them up real quick because aspirins do indeed open up your arteries, all right? And I chewed a bunch of them and that was it. But the first thought that came to my mind was, oh, I got a couple of more teaching videos that I got to write on still. I always think, make sure you finish the course. You see, if there's anything that's still left undone. And I say that only to say, remember, we all die, and live your life with the intention of fulfilling what your mission is. And I think that should be instilled in all of us, all right? Now, the only comment I would make on the Texas shooter, there'll be a teaching video that I made Sunday. And as I was making the video, I discussed some issues like this, not knowing it happened. And I'm such a news watcher, as soon as I turned my video off at my daughter's house, I Googled the news, and the top story was this tragic killing. And so I found it interesting. I wrote little notes that'll go on a post. This video goes up right now, and then maybe tomorrow I'll do a little bit of a rollout. But it was interesting because I discussed some issues about evil in the world. And I shouldn't have to recount what the big story is. The big story is the Texas gunman killing 26. And as of now, we have enough info that I read some things that said he was an atheist, but then we also understand that he had a grudge against his in-laws and had texted his in-laws, okay? And so and they attended that little church. The other night, just real quick, another media thing I'll mention. I appreciate Facebook, Google, and all these things because I utilize them. There's a lot of people that get upset when I thought my WordPress site was deleted because I went to share a video and it said from my blogger, which is Google. Google also owns YouTube, okay? So they are competitors with other online WordPress, things like that. So I had a link where I was linking videos to WordPress from Blogger and from YouTube. And it said, this is deleted. But it meant the link. And I said, deleted? You're telling me you deleted? I pay for that WordPress. But then I realized it was because they're in competition. And a lot of people get upset. And look, the media lied again the other night. They lied about the Russian thing. And this was there was something else they did. But this is what they said. They said, Google and Facebook and all, this is what the World News said. They've admitted that there was more election hacking than previously believed, which was a lie. What they admitted was there was ads bought on Facebook and all. And there were more ads that were bought, yes, indeed, by people that were Russian, trying to sway things. But that's different than hacking. But the World News said, because they're on a roll right now, they said even Facebook admitted there was more election hacking, meaning hacking of the computers. That's not what they admitted. Did the World News know they lied? Yes, they did know. They did know. Things go on a roll. if you went back, I'm not a big defender of Trump, but this Manafort, those that are familiar with it, what they found on him was past financial things. It's interesting because if you go back, and they're probably doing that with Trump's kids and all, but as I look at the landscape, the thing that you're real concerned about would be whether or not a candidate did illegal activities, or when somebody was president or Secretary of State and so forth. That's what makes the whole uranium thing and all those other things of more import. What you did in your official capacity. Not if you can go back and find some mismanagement in finances or even illegal activity. But that's what they're doing in the probe. And I watch this because I see both sides of the aisle. And you can go down that. There's not a lot of play that the Saudi Arabian prince just did a corruption crackdown. And many in the media say, oh, look, no. The way, even in Israel, some that they're saying, if people that are in power can couch things in a way, the official FBIs and CIAs and all these, even other countries have these types of organizations by different names. If you can be like Turkey or Erdogan and all, if you could say we're cracking down on terrorists, we're cracking down on corruption, then you could get away with going after your political enemies, and they do that. The other thing on NBC News that I just saw, it showed a fairly good thing, because I also have tried to discern between radical Islamic terrorists and just Muslims in general. I've tried, and people got offended because I've tried to say we don't want to paint all Muslims with that particular image. But the NBC News that I was watching online, it then began to show correctly the tragedy of the shooters and how many of them had no connection with Islam and so forth. But this is what it said on the online coverage of it. It said most people believe that terrorists are religiously inspired. And then they said that's wrong because, and then it talked about the history of whether it's a Stephen Paddock in the Vegas shooting or this man yesterday, day before. But then it said the terrorists are not inspired by religious belief and so forth. And then it said, but most of them are non-religious terrorists. Then it said, but they also have a low view of women. And I said, I watched it. I said, but you're contradicting, because some religions have a low view of women. And yet you just said that that does not play a role. And as I see, I try to look not just at the, many of my liberal friends will have good arguments against or for more gun control. Many of my conservative friends will have good arguments against it, especially being the man that slowed down the shooting was another civilian who had a weapon in the Texas case. But the other thing that I see as I watch the landscape, many in our society will say, why is there outrage? Why is there outrage that gunman kills 26 people? Now you know you're outraged. We should be. But why? And most people would say, because the man that did this did a very immoral act, which is correct. He did an act which we in this country call illegal. Do you know, before our country had laws against murder, meaning before our country was a country, there were, quote, religious laws that were against murder. Primarily we read in the Ten Commandments. Meaning morality of right and wrong is founded in something. And this is a whole legal argument that thinkers have made. But the average person normally doesn't think on this level, okay? And I'm not trying to be demeaning. But we had religious laws, the commandments of God, the Ten Commandments, that existed way before we had United States laws, rightfully so, against murder. And many of the people that argue that the Christian foundation or Christianity itself is problematic, they will often say you cannot legislate morality, because our country also had laws against all types of other things. And as time went on, we said, well, maybe these particular laws were wrong, regardless of what they were. And they said, because we can't legislate morality. And I hear people say that. But then when they get outraged that somebody stepped over a boundary, a moral boundary, and killed, none of them say, well, we can't legislate morality. No, they say, this man, even though he's now dead, but he broke a law. He broke a moral law. Because all law, in essence, is, quote, the legislation of morality. I don't want to do a theological debate. But people are mad because somebody took innocent life, and you're rightfully mad about that. But many people don't know why they're mad, or in their own reasoning, they would argue, don't expect any law to make people moral. And this, I'm not talking about the grace law debate, okay? I'm talking just in the area of thinking. And yet they're mad. I remember many years ago at the fire department, the chief, when I got hired, Tony Torres, who has passed away, Christian man. But I remember one day, I said, I was mad. I said, you know, we tell the kids in school that that the school has to be, quote, a religious-free environment, meaning you can't have codes of religion, which, like I just told you, one of them is thou shalt not kill. I said, and then when we tell a society that you, quote, can't legislate morality, then we're shocked when that barrier is crossed. So should we have a law that says murder is wrong? Of course we should. So don't ever use those who have used that other example, that have said, but you can't legislate it. Should we get away with that? Should we do away with that law? Do you know that law is indeed a religious law? That's the foundation of the law in this country, okay? That's called natural law. And anybody that has really studied law and judges and courts and so forth, and how our own United States, how we set up a system, and others had it before us. But indeed, that's what it's based upon, okay? That's what it's based upon. And as people try to separate those lines, they say, okay, well, what we really consider the greatest benefit is the freedom. See, we have this concept in this country that people can they're free to live their lives, and if they cross all these other types of barriers, if it's consenting adults, okay, in the area of, and I've used to tell people, so you think as long as it's consenting adults, regardless of what the relationship is, and then I would ask people, and there's a case right now, I say if it's a father and a consenting grown daughter, there's a case right now that I heard on the news, and they say, we're not going to have kids, but why can't we be sexual lovers? A father and an adult daughter. That's the first time this came up. And most of you would say that's just wrong. Now, I would agree with you that that's just wrong. But then the question would be, why do you say it's wrong? I say it's wrong because it's a violation of God's word. That's why I say that's wrong. That's why we have laws against incest. But the people that don't think about this, they don't realize that they're basing it on something. Your outrage over the murder of those innocent Christian people is right. And the reason you're outraged is because you were created in the image of God, whether you know it or not. And it's that conscience that God has given to man that causes man to say, this is wrong. It's us made in the image of God. And when we skew those lines in a society, and I'm no religious conservative. You see me smoke cigarettes. Do I do it to brag? Do I do? No, I smoke. I'm not. I listen to rock and roll music. So, well, John, maybe that doesn't help you, because I was kind of zoned out today. So I'm not a staunch religious conservative, but what I'm trying to tell you is the foundation of morality comes from somewhere. And it's not just coming from popular opinion or majority rule. So yes, we pray. We pray for, this will be the first. Tomorrow, I'll upload this right now. A lot of these things I taught on many of the videos. That's why I'm trying to get these other ones out. But I see where we're heading right now in the country. Anybody that investigates a president and his people, and then you start going back to any financial dealing, you're going to get stuff. They're going after the son. That's fine. Do what you want to do. We're going to have all the talk radio will be is those that are on one particular view. That's their view, and they'll just, and the other view, that'll be their view. But we all agree that this killing was wrong. And whether you know it or not, whether you're a liberal or conservative, the reason you are mad is because that's a violation of God's law. That's why you're mad. Okay? And I'm not saying we should all be mad. But that's why you're mad. Okay? This is the first one. I'll finish them tomorrow.